What's going on, y'all peoples? It's your boy Folarin Reek, and welcome to another episode of Finessing with Folarin. Today I got a special good one for y'all. How the government finessed us for so many years, but have cures for COVID-19, but still no cure for AIDS. That's crazy, man. 40 years, in a matter of a year and 6 months, you have a cure for COVID-19 pandemic, but you don't have the cure for the most death toll disease in the United States nation, plus the whole world. That's crazy, man. This is gonna be a good one. Other than that, hit that intro.
That's good.
We back, y'all. As New York hospitals fill pandemic patients last spring, Dr. Michael Gilletto flashed back the earliest days of another mystery illness. For months, Gilletto has valiantly treated a young man with unrelenting fever. The man developed an open pneumonia from a usual harness virus, and his mouth was covered with fungus that made it hard for him to swallow and eat. Another young man soon turned up with similar symptoms. Then, over the course of a few months, 3 more previously healthy Los Angeles men came down with the same constellation of problems. As he watched them die, Gilletto, both considerably and intrigued at 33, was roughly the same age they cared for, became personal as well as professional. It's crazy, man. Gilletto and several colleagues contacted the Center for Disease Control, which asked them write up the findings on June 5th, 1981, exactly 40 years ago. 40. Their report was published describing the case of those 5 young gay men who was immune. The same suddenly stopped, protected them, defying every treatment Gilletto and others tried. The condition didn't have a name then, but it would become known as AIDS. Acquired immune deficiency syndrome. The report Gilletto and his colleagues wrote will become the first official record of the disease that has since climbed more than 33 million lives around the world. 33 million. Let's get that right. 33 million. Not thousands, not hundreds, not hundreds of thousands. Million. COVID-19 has done its work faster, affecting at least 172 million people and killing 3.7 million of them in less than 18 months. Okay. But those who's around the early days of AIDS said parallels are unmistakable, a deadly phenomenon as a virus that seemed to target certain communities, though none was immune. People unwillingly infected loved ones, friends, and strangers. Like Ginobili, many of the doctors and researchers who carried those paths were defined by the AIDS are now treated COVID-19 patients. So not only do they got AIDS, some of y'all who do have AIDS in the world, I got treated with COVID-19. And y'all don't see the finesse, but we'll get into that too a little bit later. You started from ground zero, then you built planes around your flying it. Ginobili says of the treating both diseases in the early days. This was the sense of helplessness, of winging it, of doing the best you can with less adequate tools and learning as you went on. The difference between the diseases are striking. While COVID-19 was identified, brought to the public attention within weeks, the first report of AIDS likely lagged years behind symptomatic cases, and diagnosed tests took 5 years to develop. The human AIDS virus that causes wasn't identified until 1983. 2 years after the official record, researchers released the detailed genetic code of SARS-CoV-2 virus in January 2020. Comparisons. Less than a month after it came global attention, with the code in hand, scientists immediately began developing highly effective COVID-19 vaccinations, a trump that still escapes HIV researchers. They really had an extraordinary difference in the pace of reaction of these pandemics. Dr. Bruce Walker, a Harvard physicist science who has spent decades treating HIV positive patients and working to better understand the disease. Shout out to Dr. Walker, you know what I mean, doing a good thing. You know what I mean? Salute him. The hopelessness and desperation of HIV/AIDS struck deep and harder, first among gay men, and then across the world, policy communities, including in the United States. With COVID-19, racial and social e-commerce disaster, the advances became quickly evaded. Lower income communities of color disproportionately affected, but also spread far and faster, touching nearly every community of all 7 continents. Dr. Julie Gettingberg was a young medical intern in San Francisco when the first AIDS patients began arriving. First 1, then 3, then 12. By the time she finished intern by June of 1982, nearly all her patients had some manifestations of AIDS, and she often learned how to treat them by asking them what they needed. Later, as a federal official, she helped respond to the first SARS epidemic in 2002. Then, in 2009, while the head of the CDC she helped the countries prepare for the H1N1 flu pandemic. Everybody remember the H1N1. With COVID-19, she's seen history repeat itself. We've watched a lot of the same issues play out over and over again, said Gettingberg. Now Executive Vice President, Chief Patient Officer at Merck, she describes a willingness to accept that something new and important has emerged that could be a whole lot worse. Though both pandemics are far from globally in the United States, officials said talking about ending AIDS with a decade with medications and prevent measures, vaccinations, and public health efforts have cut COVID-19 infections by more than 90% since January's peak. 90%. And we ain't even touched a glimpse of the AIDS cure in the 80s. For those who speak out skeptical of science, we were heard a lot about in COVID. Gettingberg said we might take a look into HIV evidence that scientists doesn't work. Medications that are protected prevent. The greatest accomplishment of HIV science was in the medications that turned the virus from a death sentence into a chronic manageable disease. Manageable. The first one of ATZ, reposted cancer drug proven in 1987, was the only slightly help side effects of the ATZ. Other early drugs were considered worse than the disease, likely to being a chemotherapy every day for life. Okay. That's a few years later, in 1989, Dara Hasselman joined the search of HIV/AIDS medications. As one of the first scientists meeting researchers presented the triple combination drug that was transformed treatment. People were astonished, Hanadusa said. I remember sitting in the audience thinking, I better find something else to work on. This has been solved. Far from it. But then she recalls, it's a doctor stood up and told his colleagues, look at what we are asking our patients to do. People have swallowed fistful of pills 3 times a day. They suffer horrible side effects. Now we know it's possible. Let's go back and do it right. Hans remember him saying, the idea that real people have to live every day with the drug therapist she developed became driving force in her career. Honolulu said at the drug company Merck, she went on to help create the drug less stress, the first new cause of intentional inhibitors, which were less toxic and easier for patients to manage. Now Vice President of Infectious Disease at Merck, Hazusu hopes to keep improving the medications, working towards 1 pill instead of a day instead of 3. Long-term injectables that will at least be 3 months over a year. It's still a challenge. She said it still have to reach everyone who needs treatment or could be helped by taking the same drugs to prevent infection. It's fascinating to see how far we have came and how far we still need to go. Honolulu said, for Bruce Richmond, the revelation that would change his life came in 2012. He had been diagnosed with HIV in 2003, and though he took his first medication faithfully, 4 pills a day, he convinced himself a disease vector toxic even. I had never given up the concept of being intimate without fear, Richmond said. The idea that I could pass on AIDS to someone was too much. 9 years after his diagnosis, he was finally told that because he took HIV medications reliably, his viral loads were undetectable. That means he couldn't pass on HIV. The findings so moved that indicate his life since the getting the measurement out. Undetectable equal untransmittable, or U equals U. Public health officials avoided telling patients worry it may be HIV positive people. They don't think they need their medications or make them vulnerable to other sexually transmitted disease. Richmond, founder and director of Preventional Access Campaign, believe it's far more powerful to let people know they are not dangerous to society. Just as people vaccinate against COVID-19 and reveal to know that they can no longer make others sick. With COVID, I think people are going to understand a little bit of what it is to be afraid of passing on the virus to people you love. He said, people with AIDS have lived with that fear for decades. So, Walker already has spent watching years his patients waxed away from AIDS with a healthy looking man bound to his office one day in 1994 asking how long he had to live. The man had been infected 15 years earlier but hadn't defied every aspect of his death sentence. Walker realized the man's immune system was somehow kept HIV in check without medications. That was launched Walker on a decade-long quest to understand people he calls elite controllers, whose bodies seem to know how to control HIV. In 2009, with a $100 million donation, Walker found the RAG Institute of MGH, MIT, and Harvard, and Disciplinary Scientific Institute aimed at unraveling the mysteries of the immune system. One of the steering committee's members in created developing Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccination. Now Walker, who's tried to direct Institute, believes he understands how elite controls and contains, even eliminate viruses. He and his colleagues have designed a vaccine with the idea of providing represents the power of elite controller. We don't have proof of what we can do yet, but we already have a strong ratio for this, Walker said. The vaccine will be based on mRNA technologies proven through COVID-19 vaccinations and will target areas of the virus that can manipulate and eliminate. Walker hopes to begin testing within a year. Now, Philip Wilson was 24 in 1981 when he swallowed a Lumpium nodules suggested that he had been infected. His former diagnosis didn't come until 1986. Delayed by 5 years of lack of testing, his doctor said he had 6 months to live. He attempted an address book of those days before phone calls. Every time a friend died of AIDS, Wilson would put a check mark to the person that named it. He lost the address book around 1987. It estimates by then he had added 220 check marks. His own partner died in 1989. While absorbing every devastating loss, Chris was not only one to lose that day to AIDS. Wilson still hasn't completely come to terms with the grief. This went from 1982 to 1997. That's 15 years of the kind of intense dying, he said. It was impossible to process anyone dying, no matter how the death. In 1997, Wilson ended up interviewing intensive care unit in Los Angeles, an ICU. Connected to the tubes and unable to speak, his mother flew from Chicago, expecting to watch him die. Instead, he got his first dose of the inhibitors, the drug that transformed the fight against HIV and AIDS. Dorothy landed in Oz, and all of a sudden, the world and technology that went protests in the inhibitors was like, Wilson said, he bounced back like Lazarus. He contributed his long-term survival with AIDS to the manufacturer, including luck, a focus on living rather than dying, periodic medication vaccinations in the early days to avoid the drug resistance, and a large, intense family. I am alive today because I personally personified my actions and what happens when people with HIV and AIDS have failed the love and support we need to deserve from family and friends, he said. Early, Wilson decided to become an activist and co-founder of the Black AIDS Institute. Renaya Copeland is now one of the group's presidents and CEO, calling attention to the fact that both COVID-19 and HIV and AIDS had disproportionately affected people of color. Over one half of new HIV cases in the U.S. are southern states, where many people have limited across healthcare, Copeland said. What we see is a wildly dispatch of HIV, which is part of what makes this 40-year movement hit so hard. She said, we have come so far, yet in the same place we were 40 years ago. We were looking at will be most impact. 40 years, man, that's deep. 40 years, still no, it's crazy. Along with HIV, Wilson, as an early adopter of medications, trying nearly every new HIV test that has came out to the market. He doesn't even remember how his pills he had to pop every day, even at the height. But thinks about it, it's somewhere from 10 to 15, of which he had his own requirement before a meal or after. All sorts of crazy regimens. 10 to 15? 10 to 15 pills a day. Imagine that, y'all. Like, it's deep. That's like, that's 70 to 90, 95 pills a week. Times that by a month. Do the math, man. It's crazy. With COVID-19, all you need is two doses, and you automatically cured. Some bullshit. 2 to 90, and y'all don't see no problem with that. Y'all don't see the finesse between 2 shots and 90 pills a week. Come on, man. Stay woke, y'all. Wake up, man. Stay woke. Now he says he nearly takes any medication, but only wants to keep HIV under control. The rest, he said, because he is a 65-year-old man. I have lived far past my expiration date. Along with AIDS, become a key focus of another activist. Jason Dudley, 56, who had been HIV positive, active for 20 years. Dudley, director of global security for a software company, said his view of HIV has changed with the decades. As a young man discovering his sexuality, he saw AIDS as a death sentence. His own diagnosis came after treatments after he turned into a chronic infection. He has lived through a number of improvements in those medications. Envisioning the next 20 years, he has hoped to treat will continue to improve, offering longer-term protection. Maybe vaccinations will even be provided a cure. But in the meantime, data suggests that HIV positive people age faster than normal, developing high cholesterol and blood pressure, and the hardest soothes at a younger age. Throughout, it's still unclear that the form of the virus or the medication. Along with AIDS is a scare, Dudley said. Arguing with HIV is our next challenge. For the most part, Michael Ginobili, now a LPLA Health in Los Angeles, said he's satisfied with the trajectory of his career. He has been caring for patients more than 40 years. In 2020, he began treatment HIV patients with COVID-19 who all fared well. I've been able to save some lives, he said, but then the most satisfying thing. It's crazy. Now let's talk about some details. Detail 1. June 5th, 1981, the first official description of illness that would become known as HIV. September 24th, 1982, the mysterious alignment was named acquired HIV or AIDS by the Center of Disease Control. May 20th, 1983, French researchers announced the discovery of the virus that caused AIDS and named it Human Immunodeficiency Virus, or HIV. December 1984, Ryan White, 13-year-old from India, diagnosed with HIV, affected a blood transfusion. White died in April 1990, just before he was able to graduate high school. The Ryan White Comprehensive AIDS Resource Emergency Care actively passed in 1990, provide health care for HIV positives who can't afford it. Their medications. October 2nd, 1985, actor Rock Houston dies of AIDS, and his girlfriend, the actress Elizabeth Taylor, became an AIDS advocate. In March 1987, the Cancer Drug Corporation, or ATZ, was approved for use in AIDS patients. It offered a migraine benefit over the years, said Dr. Ginobili, who was involved in a clinic trial. Was proven that a drug could be against the virus. November 7, 1991, Magic Johnson announced that he retired from basketball as he was diagnosed with HIV. He goes on to raise awareness more than 10 million people to support HIV and AIDS. December 1995, the first of new class of drugs called protesting inhibitors called Sequarinir was approved. Combined with the ATZ, a similar drug, that cocktails began lowering the viral load of people with HIV, undetectable to levels, and was difficult to follow. November 15, 2007, the first drug called intense inhibitors was approved by becoming a combination of therapy. And then the last, July 16, 2012, the drug Travivia was approved for pre-exposure phosphophysis, or PrEP, in which healthy people can actively drug to reduce the risk of catching HIV. Travivia. Now, I feel highly strongly that was all a finesse. Look now, in the matter of over a year, we supposedly have a cure that was supposed to be the most lethal virus that we ever seen in a matter of a year. But you telling me the second deadliest virus that's been killing over 40 years now. 40 years. And we just now getting scientific views that Tavaria is helping to catch AIDS. Come on, government, man. Y'all doing too much, man. Y'all doing too much. Y'all putting too much finesse into this. You know, I understand. Look at Magic. He got it in 91. It's 2021. Still don't have it, but he has money. Now let's wake up, y'all. Seriously, man. They finessing us not only for us to be getting them rich, but at the same time, they finessing us to see that it's all about the bread. It's all about the dollars, man. And it's really on some bullshit. For real. But make sure to like, subscribe, comment. You know what I mean? Have a share party. And if you're new to the channel, make sure to hit the subscribe button. You know what I mean? It's your boy Folarin Reek. Catch you on another one. Later.